Hello, my psychic sister. How are you doing?
My beautiful partner in true crime. I'm wonderful. How are you? How was Boys to Men?
It was great. I don't know what I expected, but it exceeded all expectations.
Okay. Amazing.
They were so great. They still do that choreo. They got it down. And it was just like fun and uplifting and like emotional. It was amazing. It was great. Highly recommend.
I love it. And did you get to go to the fair as well?
Yeah, of course.
Did you ride your Pharaoh ride?
I sure did. I rode the Pharaoh's Fury. I rode the Gravitron.
That was my favorite, obviously.
If you were a child of the 80s and early 90s, there was no level of lawlessness like in the fucking Gravitron.
Oh, no, it was insane.
All bets were like that. When I went, I was like, oh, people are just like not doing it. Okay. All right.
They're taking their lives in their hands. They literally like flip upside down all this shit. No, I was not that person.
People in Milwaukee are reserved normal people. When I would go on the Gravitron, I wouldn't do this shit. I would like maybe like lie on my side. But I remember even at the St. John's Fair, I did not go to school at St. John's, but my grandparents were like patrons of their church. And my grandmother would always like cook like huge vats of arroz con pollo, chicken and rice, and like sell it at the fair. And my grandfather would sell the tickets there. So we would go every year. And I remember the guy who would be like in the center, like running the fucking Gravitron, would get out and like walk across like at an angle the fucking railing.
Yes.
Wild as shit.
Obviously, we lived in two completely different places, but the guy where I lived also did that. I feel like that's just like standard for them. They're like, what the fuck else am I doing?
Oh no, that was not the case in Milwaukee. They're just like, this is insane. Which is correct because it's dangerous as fuck.
Yes, it's very dangerous.
It was great. I rode on all the rides with the exception of one because I was like, that's kind of crazy. It's like almost like a claw hand and you sit.
Yep.
And it spins and it goes upside down.
Yeah.
Like it's almost like Pharaoh's Fury, but it goes all the way upside down and you're spinning at the same time. And I was like, and it was really, really, really high. And I was like, I don't think I'm
good.
Do that.
Do the individual cages of that spin as well? So like the whole thing spinning and the individual cages spin or no?
Okay, so that's the zipper, which I love incidentally, which is like a Ferris wheel, but the cages are spinning.
Yeah. But on meth, yes.
Yeah. No, this is like, it almost looks like a claw in that everyone is seated and then it's spinning and then it's also moving in a pendulum direction at the same time and going upside down.
Yeah, that's a lot.
It's a lot. It was really crazy. But I was like, and it was really tall. It's called the Kraken. And I was like, I'll bet. And I was like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to partake in that. But it was great. And then I got to go to Chicago for a few days afterwards. And I got to hang out with Sam, our listener, Sam, who we adore.
Sam.
And her fiance, who is like a historian, I guess. And he took us on like a spooky tour of Chicago.
I love it.
Yeah. So he took us to the cemetery where allegedly there was this bronze statue. Well, it's like copper, I think. Yeah, it's copper. And it's like this like hooded statue that's looking down and it got like oxidized over time. So it's green except for the face. So it's very ominous looking. And allegedly, if you look in its eyes, it'll show you how you die.
Ooh.
But its eyes are closed. So like, I was like, do I need to pay my rent? Or am I just like,
that's all I need
soon?
to know. Yeah.
Yeah, man. And he took us to like the, where the movie theater and the alleyway where John Dillinger was shot and like the Hull House where the demon baby allegedly was born and lived in. It was very, very cool. It was awesome. It was great. I had a great time.
That's so much fun. I love that. I'm sad I missed out on that.
Because you were seeing a rescheduled show of Guster, yes?
I know. That was the irony of all ironies.
Yep.
Is I didn't go on this trip because I was checking off a bucket list item to see one of my favorite bands, Guster. And then it poured rain that day and they rescheduled it.
Yeah, it was a state of emergency, which I
Yeah.
somehow have the good luck of always not being in town for whenever there is one.
Okay, so you have some sort of weather powers?
I guess. Because
Okay.
literally,
So I have you to blame for
my,
this? Is that what I'm
I mean, no, I wanted you to see
No,
Guster,
I'm
obviously.
just fucking with you. I got to see them still.
But it was the thing that, like, our flight was delayed like 2 hours,
Oh, damn.
even though there was no weather here yet. It was like on its way. So they're trying to find like a pocket that didn't have that weather. And then basically when I landed, all the flights to and from New York were canceled.
Holy shit.
So I like just made it out. Yeah. See my boys to men.
See your boys. I love it.
Yeah.
No, I still got to see Guster. It's all good.
Yeah. How were they? Were they bucket list item? Live up to the hype?
They were amazing. I had such a wonderful time.
I'm so glad.
They played so many of my favorite songs.
Fuck yeah.
They're wonderful. The lead singer had a suede jacket that had all these like fun embroidery and patches and stuff on it.
Fuck yeah.
And one of them was a UFO. So
oh, there you go.
Dreams were made.
Man after your heart.
Yes. But yeah, I sang my heart out and they were great. They were just great.
I love that so much. Also, exciting news. We were nominated for Best Humor Podcast at the Earworthy Awards.
Heyo.
Which is very cool, especially since we didn't submit ourselves for consideration. It was just like, by the way, you're nominated. We're like, oh, fuck, that's cool.
Yeah, amazing.
My cousin has an Emmy.
Oh, cash.
Because they give out Emmys for advertising.
Oh, what?
Yeah.
News to me.
And he won this Emmy in the way I think is the ideal way for anyone to win an award. So he's very successful in the whole bit. And his partner submitted him for consideration and he had no clue that this had happened. And then I was like, oh, by the way, you want an Emmy? And he's like, wait, what? Yeah, so he has just an Emmy casually in his house.
NBD.
You know, for advertising.
Who doesn't, right?
I mean, right? Yeah, so we're nominated for Best Humor Award for the Earworthy Awards, which is very cool and unexpected. It's an honor to be nominated.
Yeah. Thank you.
And if you want to see our nominated fucking show live, you should come to New Orleans. October 4th, we are doing our first ever live show at the Always Lounge in New Orleans. Get yourself there. And if you want some extra spookiness on the side, we're also doing a private ghost vampire true crime tour the day before on October 3rd. So you should check that shit out. And, you know, especially for the tour, tickets are extremely limited. So get on that. So what better way to start spooky season and start October than in New Orleans with us doing all the spooky things?
Yes. I can't wait. I'm so excited for the tour. I already submitted for my PTO, so let's fucking go.
Yes. I cannot wait. I'm so excited. Oh my God.
Me too. It's going to be so much fun.
Yeah.
I also took your recommendation and I watched Amy Bradley is Missing.
And?
Which we need to talk about.
Yes. Yes, please, let's.
The fuck? First of all, I put it on at 1:30 in the morning.
Oh no, girl.
I was like, I fell asleep and everything.
No,
like,
girl.
I'll just put it on and watch it in the background.
So you went to bed at like 4 or 5 in the morning?
Yep. I like paused on episode 3 and I was like, well, I only have 13 minutes left. I might as well just like finish it at this point.
We've made it thus far. What the fuck?
What the fuck? Yeah, I think she's still alive.
I do too. And like the eyewitnesses, sure, like you could argue that
she has a very distinctive tattoo, which a lot of people clocked.
Yeah. She's a Tasmanian devil tattoo.
Yeah.
But the thing is, when the FBI's like, nah, girl, that's her. That's when I'm like, dude, what the fuck? And you hear about this a lot, the uptick on searches to like her site on her birthday and around like Christmas, Thanksgiving.
From IP specifically, like the last place she was seen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And like on Christmas and Thanksgiving and her mom's birthday. Like, why? Not her birthday. Her mom's birthday.
Oh, it was her mom's birthday?
Might have been her birthday too, but her mom's birthday was one of them. Because I was like, that's totally a thing that like you would do as a daughter. If you missed your family and you were still alive and you couldn't reach out to them. You
couldn't have pictures of them, but they're pictures of you on
you missed
your
them
website.
Because they put just like random family photos up
Mhm.
and things like that. I'm just saying, I'm very close with my mom. I love my mom. If I was missing in this situation and I had no other way to like see her, check in with her,
Mhm.
I would fucking do that on her birthday.
Absolutely. Yeah, girl, it's
It's insane. And you're right. The fucking, what was he, the cruise director?
the cruise
like,
director?
Bro,
Shut
you're
the fuck
on
up.
camera. He's so blasé about how much he doesn't give a fuck about this.
100%.
Insane.
And you could even say we acted in what we thought was the best practices at the time. We know better now. No, girl. He's like 100% would do again. No regrets.
Yeah. What?
Girl.
Like, her family realized she was missing within 30 minutes and they wouldn't make the announcement because it was too early. They don't want to
It was
wake
7
people
a.m.
up.
Like,
We're going to like wait an hour.
And they're like, oh, also, like, if this is a crime scene, can we destroy it, please? Can we just like send in the cleaners and like,
Yeah, we're just gonna clean up. What?
girl.
The fuck?
I mean, really, I don't think they wanted it to be a crime scene because that's
No.
a bad look.
Yeah.
Like, it's a fucking business, as he kept saying over and over again. It is a fucking
Repeatedly.
business.
Yeah. And it's not your business, dude.
No.
Relax.
Yeah.
No, it's terrifying.
Yeah. I don't think she. And then there's all this like stuff of this guy being sketch as fuck with these women.
Oh, yeah.
Yellow?
Yeah. I can't believe they got his daughter.
Mm-hmm.
And that like his daughter called the family. I was just like, hey, the suitcase full of pictures.
Girl.
They obviously like couldn't get into that more, but like, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Nah, that's so sketchy.
Yeah, man. If any of you guys have seen Amy Bradley's Missing, slide into those DMs. Let us know because I would love to hear your thoughts. Like, I was reading something today where people being like, the whole documentary was ridiculous and exploitative of the family and that all the eyewitness accounts were like incredible and that was bullshit. And I was like, I don't really agree. But like, I could see that point, except that the FBI is saying like, no, girl, that's her. That was a match.
Yeah. Also, on the exploitative aspect of this, I feel like the family wants this to get out there. The more people that see her face that
For sure.
know of this story, the more likely it is that she can be found
Yeah,
and returned to them.
absolutely. Absolutely. Because they're basically like the critique I read was basically like, they just need to move on and get over. Like they need a lot of help and they need to move on that their daughter's dead.
No!
And I'm like, right. But when the FBI is saying like, nah, girl, she's not, what the fuck do you do? Be like, you know, Amy, we had a good run, but fuck it. Have fun being trafficked or whatever the fuck her situation is.
No!
Yeah, girl. That shit was crazy.
It was insane.
I want to say I also banged it out like,
Oh yeah, because they cliffhanger you
They suck
every
you in.
fucking episode, and then you're like, oh, okay,
Yeah.
I'll just watch a little bit of the next one, and then it's 4:00 in the morning, and you're still watching it. Yeah, but it reminds me of that like whatever, like meme or like kind of like video prompt that's going around lately, where it's like you text your family and be like, if I went missing, like how long would you wait before you like gave up looking for me? And it's
oh
like,
my God, I've not seen this.
most parents are just like, I would fucking never.
Yeah.
Like, never. It's like, yeah. Especially like with all of this fucking evidence.
Yeah, girl.
Come on.
Yeah, it's
wild.
fucked. Yeah.
Yeah. But it was really good. I really enjoyed the documentary. So
Yeah.
thank you for that recommendation.
You're welcome. Anything else? Any other recs? Any other things? I know
No.
you've been working like a crazy person.
I have been working like a crazy person. Nope. Got my Guster fix.
Fuck yeah.
My life is made.
Amazing.
Do you have a spooky, creepy, paranormal story for me this week?
I sure fucking do.
Of course you do.
This is a wild one. So buckle up. So, sources. Doug.org, which is Denver Urban Gardens, centralcityopera.org, teahousecollective.us, apropedia.org, and the Otherworld podcast, because it has been several minutes since we have revisited Otherworld.
Oh my God, I love it. I listen to it all the time. It's so creepy. It's so good. Again, if you haven't listened to Otherworld yet, like get on that. What are you doing with your life?
It's great. It's fantastic. Maggie grew up in San Antonio, and by the time she reached her 20s, she was over it. She hated where she was from and just wanted to get away from her hometown and everything and everyone she knew. She wanted to pack up and move somewhere new where she didn't know anybody and start fresh, but she didn't exactly have the capital to move out on her own to a far-off place. However, Maggie's grandmother lived just north of Denver in Commerce City, Colorado. And she still lived in the house that Maggie's father grew up in. And since her husband / Maggie's grandfather had passed away a while ago, the 91-year-old was left living in the house all alone. So Maggie called up her grandmother and the two struck up a deal. If Maggie moved to Colorado and took care of her grandmother, she could live in the house with her for free. And Maggie thought that sounded great. So in 2011, the 25-year-old packed her bags and moved to the Centennial State. And Maggie's new digs weren't exactly glamorous. She lived in the unfinished basement of her father's childhood home. And Maggie makes it a point to say that the basement was completely unfinished. She described it as having cement floors, 70s orange shag carpeting, dripping ceiling pipes, and a 50-year-old water heater that was right next to where she slept, which clanked and rattled all of the time.
Oh, no.
She said, quote, "If you think of a haunted basement, this is the one that you think about," end quote. Understood.
I'll be sleeping on the couch, thank you.
Maggie's grandmother was an old woman with limited income, so she didn't have any internet, and the only TV they had was basic and television. So if they watched TV, it would be like Lawrence Welk and like evangelical shit.
Oh, God.
Girl.
No. It's my nightmare.
Literally my next line. And while this might sound like an absolute nightmare to most 25-year-olds, Maggie loved it. She had always considered herself more of a Luddite anyway. So she passed the time reading in the basement, listening to records, and writing postcards to people she knew. Maggie was also very into gardening, and she took to growing vegetables in the backyard. Maggie also really loved spending time with her grandmother and taking care of her. She made the old woman dinner every night, a dinner that usually consisted of chicken noodle soup, saltines, and some hard-boiled eggs. While Maggie points to this regular nightly meal as an example of the type of budget they were on, this honestly sounds pretty fucking great to this soup slut. Just saying. I would love this. Sounds amazing.
I'm sorry. I've never heard the term soup slut before, and I fucking
100%.
love it, dude. Yes.
I'm a hot tub hoe and a soup slut. Absolutely.
I love it. I was just going to
Till
say,
I
I
die.
fucking love chicken noodle soup and saltines. Like,
Girl.
that's my fucking jam.
Yes, 100%. I love it. And I have friends of mine who give me grief about this
No.
all of the time. Like, there's a friend of mine, Ed, who 2 years ago for my birthday, he gave me like a grocery bag of like Campbell's soup as like a
joke
gag,
gift?
like birthday gift. And
You're
I was like,
thank you
joke's
so much.
on you. You just gave me fucking lunch for the next 2 weeks. Thank
I'm
you.
eating all of this. Thank you.
Yeah. And I did. And it was amazing.
No, I feel that. Johnny and I, when we first started dating, got into a big thing about soup because he was like, such like a sad meal or something. And I was like, soup has been keeping people alive for fucking ever. I was like, how dare
Soup's
you
amazing.
besmirch soup?
How dare you indeed? Fuck yes.
Oh my God, I love you. Fellow
love
soup
you.
slut.
Maggie took her grandmother to church every Sunday and made sure to keep the house clean. And the two fell into a nightly routine where every night after dinner, her grandmother would pull out the photo albums and show her the pictures and tell the same stories about her friends and family. And she did this every night. She would show Maggie the same pictures and tell her the same stories over and over, night after night. And then the two would sit in the living room and her grandmother would read the same newspaper from like 1972 that she had read every single night. Because I'm guessing this may be like a
Dementia,
thing.
Alzheimer's situation.
Seems like it, yeah. And while it would have been beyond normal to be frustrated with the senile behavior, Maggie said, quote, "And I really just loved it and was all patient with it a lot of the time because she was such a beautiful, kind woman," end quote. And that's how life was for the two women. And while Maggie loved her grandmother and loved spending time with her, she realized that she had become really isolated. So she joined a master gardening class held by the Denver Urban Gardens, a nonprofit organization that supports Denver residents in creating sustainable, food-producing neighborhood community gardens. Maggie was interested in learning more about growing food in Colorado, as well as meeting some new people, so she signed up. After one of her classes, this nice punk guy she casually knew came up to her and invited her to a house party. He told her that he knew she was new in town and was living with her grandmother and didn't really have any friends here, but, quote, there's a party at this house tonight and I think you should go, end quote, before adding, quote, I'm not going to be there, but these people are really nice and I think you'd really fit in with them and you should go, end quote. And he gave Maggie the address. So she was like, cool. So she stopped by a gas station and picked up a 12-pack of beer to bring to the party because Maggie was raised correctly and is an excellent guest.
Yes.
And she headed over to this house. And when she got there, she saw 3 guys sitting on a porch. She got out of the car and walked over to the porch with her beers and asked about the party. And they told her that the party was actually tomorrow night.
Oh, awkward.
So
You're
awkward.
Like, I'm just going to go drive off a cliff now. Sorry. Thanks.
Yeah. That's like when I showed up at Donna's for Christmas and I showed up a day early because
You're like, I'm really prompt.
because as a Cuban, I've never celebrated Christmas on Christmas Day.
It's
like Christmas
Christmas
to me is
Eve.
Christmas Eve.
Same.
And she was like kind of like surprised. And I was like, bitch, like you invited me. And then I looked through the text and I was like, oh no, at no point did she say Christmas Eve. I was like, oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. I'm such an asshole. Oh my God. But Donna was the best. And she's like, I just had a terrible phone call with a family member.
Like,
so
come
I'm so happy
in.
to see you. Come on
Yeah.
in. And it was
Prosecco.
the best. But I know Donna. Like imagine showing up to a fucking party of people you don't know, like a house. And it's like, girl, no.
No.
It's a wrong day.
That's how you get shot. Like,
Girl.
yeah.
But they're like, since she had driven all that way, that she was free to hang out with them. And because Maggie and I are not the same person, she was like, oh, okay, cool. And just took the men up on their offer and hung out with them all night, drinking the beers that she brought with her. I would think that this was sus as fuck. I would roll the fuck out
Yeah,
immediately.
I'm going home to grandma right now.
Yeah, and my fucking chicken soup.
Yeah.
It's waiting for me. Maggie and I are not the same person.
Remind me, what year is this again? Remind me.
2011.
Okay, no, this is insane. I was gonna say, if this is like 1980, like, okay, I kind of get it. Like,
No.
you never had
No.
like phones, like, there's nothing to do. Like, yeah, no.
Absolutely the fuck not. I am like, I was being set up. Some crazy
Yeah.
shit's going to happen. No.
This is a murder house. Like, get out.
100%. Girl. Girl. Okay. But Maggie said that they were all really nice, and she learned that they lived in a community house in downtown Denver. While she was sitting on the porch chatting with the boys, one of the residents of the house they were at drove up on her bike. She said her name was Abby and asked Maggie who she was, and the San Antonio transplant introduced herself. And Maggie was taken by Abby's charm and bubbly personality, and she said the 2 women became instant friends. She told Abby about the house party mix-up, and Abby was like, look, just come back tomorrow night. There's going to be a real party here, and you'll meet a lot of really cool people. So Maggie returned the following night, and Abby was right. Not only was there a real party there, but there were a ton of awesome, creative people there, as well as Abby and her partner at the time, Tovio. And Maggie had such a great time hanging out with everyone that she started spending more time with this group of people. However, she became closest to Abby and Tovio. And Maggie and her group of eclectic friends started working on a lot of creative projects together. They built musical instruments and made music videos. They did poetry readings and street performances. Maggie said, quote, it was just like a lot of like just crazy, weird fun. Nothing was like super serious, end quote. Then one day, Tovio got a phone call from a woman he knew about the Haunting Festival at the Central City Opera House in Central City, Colorado, about 35 miles west of Denver. The Haunting Festival was an annual event that catered to the wealthier residents of the Denver area who were looking for a spooky upscale event. For $350 a ticket, guests would don their best 1920s attire, and while enjoying hors d'oeuvres and sipping on martinis and champagne, throughout the intimate Victoria-era Jewel Box Opera House, they could partake in a variety of the evening's spooky offerings like ghost tours, magic shows, or tarot and palm readings. Sign me the fuck up.
I was literally going to say, was this designed specifically with you in mind?
Yeah. Have I absolutely gone to shit like this on the
Yeah.
reg? Yes. I don't think I've ever paid $350 for it, but
Oh, Steve.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're upscale and spooky. Like, this tracks.
Mm-hmm. The woman who called Tovio was the event manager. She was booking performers for the festival, and she called him to ask if he knew anybody who could do a seance. And Tovio thought of Maggie and asked her if she would be interested in doing it. And immediately Maggie said no. But Tovio was like, why don't you just talk to the woman who's running this thing to get some more information? So Maggie was like, all right, and she called her up. And the organizer was encouraging Maggie to take the gig, but Maggie basically told her, "Thank you, but I'm not a psychic or a medium, and I don't know how to conduct a seance." And the woman was like, "That's okay. You can just fake it and put on a good show. Also, the gig pays $250. Maggie said, quote, "I was really poor at the time. I had never gotten paid to do anything like creative. Not that amount of money. They paid me $250, but to me at that time, this was 2011, that was a lot of money. I had just been working like really hard manual labor jobs my whole life, and how could I turn down $250 to just go and pretend to be crazy for a couple hours, you know?" End quote. Not only that, once the seance was done, Maggie would be done too, so she could go home or wander around the party and enjoy the other performances. So Maggie was like, "You got yourself a psychic," and accepted the gig, which, yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
So Maggie found the spookiest looking clothing that she had and scrounged up some things already in her room that she thought would be fun to bring to the event to sell this fake seance. Maggie said, quote, "My plan was just to make this seance as extreme as possible and more of a joke and more like fun and funny than scary. I just wanted it to be ridiculous. I was mostly in it to just get the money and like get in there and have some fun and get out. So I wasn't trying at all, really. I would say, like, if I had bought a ticket and signed up to watch me do what I did, I would have been really disappointed. I will say that." End quote. So the day of the event, Tovio drove up with Maggie to the Opera House. Tovio was also hired to be one of the performers at the festival. The majority of the people who had been hired to be the entertainment at the event were all amateurs, which put Maggie's concerns of being spotted as a fake at ease. She said, quote, "I remember I went and got like a crystal ball reading from this lady, and it was very cheesy and corny. It was just all purely entertainment to sell like $350 tickets to rich people that want to come out and have like a fun weekend. I don't think that anybody that was there was a professional. And even if they were, they weren't trying very hard." End quote. Savage. So when they arrived at the Opera House, the space had been transformed. In addition to all of the employees also wearing flapper dresses, it was evident that the event organizers had spent a considerable amount of money on lighting and carpeting to add to the feel of a decadent Hollywood haunting experience. So the two were met by the event organizer, and she took Maggie to an upstairs room and told her that this was where she was going to be performing the seance, and that she had the room to herself to set it up as she would like. In the center of the room was a long, fancy dining table that took up almost the entire room. At one end of the table was the door to the room, so Maggie walked over to the other end of the table and set her things down. She brought some paper, some candles, some red wax markers, and a dish to burn things, and her deck of tarot cards. Once everything was set up, Maggie went out to the party where she watched a magic performance and had her cheesy crystal ball reading before heading back to the seance room to get ready for her own performance. She sat at the far end of the table, put a black lace cloth over her head, and waited for the guests to arrive. About 30 people showed up, hoping to pierce the veil. They sat down at the long table on either side of the fake medium. One of the venue employees turned on the lights, and Maggie held her head and started chanting. She told the spectators that they were going to try and communicate with one of the spirits who was present. And what she wanted everyone to do was to really focus on their space, to breathe and focus on what's happening around them, but not to talk. And everyone got really quiet, and Maggie began the performance. She started with the tarot cards. She would randomly pull one out and say, "This one means this thing." Then she would put it in a pile, and she just started throwing tarot cards out onto the table faster and faster. And the performance just got more manic and unhinged as it went on. She would say, "I think I'm getting a message." And she would take out a piece of paper and write something down with a marker and be like, "Spirit, is this what you were trying to say?"
I love this.
Yeah. Then she would burn the paper in the dish, and she would take the red paint marker and smear it all over her face, saying, "The spirits are contacting me. There's someone in this room."
Sell it, girl. Okay.
Girl, yeah. Maggie said, quote, "And then right when I was doing that, I just felt like this sheer utter fear, pure disappointment in myself, and like cold and shaky and like out of control. And I looked up and I saw that there was a man that wasn't a human standing in the back of the room by the door. end quote.
You fucked around and found out. Yep.
Girl!
Yep. Just saying.
Just saying. He was about 6 feet tall without any discernible features. She said he was a shadow, but was darker than the other shadows in the back of the room and had the outline of a person. And while she couldn't make out an actual person, she could see this shadow man and feel his presence very suddenly, very intensely, and he was staring right at Maggie. Maggie said, quote, I immediately got quiet. I'm realizing that I wasn't playing a game anymore, that this ghost who was listening and was probably in the room the whole time, and there was probably like more of them, but this was the only one that I was seeing. But it was like paying attention. And I think it was really interested in me in particular. Like maybe it hadn't gotten spoken to in a long time, or like maybe it was perceiving me as somebody who had a way for it to have a connection with living people or something, end quote. Maggie said that while the presence was very heavy, it didn't feel angry or malicious, more curious than anything, interested in Maggie and what she was doing. She said that his appearance almost felt as if he was saying, Did you call my name? Maggie was shook, but she didn't want to freak out in front of the other guests, so she started taking what was happening very seriously. She said, quote, I settled down. I stopped acting crazy. I stopped rubbing paint all over my face. I stopped burning stuff. I stopped everything that I was doing immediately, and I got really quiet, and I just said, I believe that there's somebody in the room with us. You know, I could feel that, like the pressure in the room just like drop, end quote. She said that everyone in the room got even quieter than they were before. And while most of the participants of the fake seance were skeptical, some of the guests got really excited at the prospect of having made contact with someone from the other side, asking where they were, what they looked like, what was their name, etc. And Maggie was just trying to calm everyone down in the room. And since this ghostly appearance had shown up to her bullshit seance, Maggie decided that she was going to try and do this for real. Maggie said, quote, and I just started asking it questions, really quieting down my mind and giving a lot of attention and respect to the being in the room, and not listening to what was coming from inside me or from the other people in the room. I just wanted to listen purely to him. And that was difficult to do, but I wanted to just give it my best from that point out instead of like continuing to play a game, end quote. She asked him his name and his age, and despite her trying to focus, she really wasn't getting any answers. She felt as though what the being really wanted was to be seen. It seems that once the entity realized that Maggie could see him and was trying to communicate with him, he got really interested in her. And that's when he started moving closer to Maggie. And that really scared the shit out of Maggie. When she says this bit where she's like, it was like, oh my God, you can see me. There's this scene in Ghosts UK where Allison, who can see the ghost, is like not on her property. She's like walking through the woods somewhere else. And then you see like a dead person who's like almost like a conquistador or something like that. And he's like, wait, you can see me. He's like, hello, hi. And she's like talking to someone else. He's like, follow her. He's like, hi, you can see me, hi. And like, and it just reminded me of that.
Yes.
She said, quote, I didn't want it to come closer to me. I was very freaked out, and I was doing a fake seance, and I accidentally summoned a being. And I was also just the whole time being like, am I just experiencing some sort of like psychotic episode? Like, am I just projecting this? I don't know. I've gone back and forth about this for years and years and years. I still don't know what the answer is, but I do know what I experienced and what I saw. And it was very real to me at the time, end quote. So all this is going down, and Maggie's trying to not freak out in front of the 30 people present because remember, this is supposed to be fake. And the woman sitting next to her escalates the whole situation by getting up and saying, Spirit, how can we help you pass on to the next life? And Maggie's like, what the fuck? Saying, quote, and I immediately got really angry. I knew that that was going to create a problem for me because I was giving this entity a lot of attention all of a sudden, and it was really curious about what we were doing and really curious about me. And she had just asked how I could help it, and I didn't know how to help it. I didn't even know how to really process anything that was going on, end quote, which is fair.
Yeah.
So As soon as the woman said this, Maggie was like, no, we can't help you. I'm sorry. We're just going to have to go ahead and end it there.
Also, no talking. No one gets to talk anymore.
That's right. I'm the medium,
Shut
not
the fuck
you.
up.
Please and thank you. And the woman got mad at Maggie. She was like, what do you mean? Like, let's talk to him more. Like, what are you doing? Let's see what we can do. And Maggie said, we can't do anything. We need to just accept that this entity graced us with his presence and he needs to go on his way. And so do we now. So I hope everyone had a good time. And she shut the whole thing down pretty quickly. Maggie said, as soon as she said, we can't help you, the thing in the back of the room vanished. But instead of feeling relief, Maggie said that she knew that she'd made a huge mistake. She felt that even though the shadow man was gone, it wasn't going to forget what happened. And Maggie believed that it was either going to seek out some kind of help or that it was going to stalk her.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Welcome to your new roommate.
Maggie spent the rest of the festival in a back room by herself, waiting for the evening to end. So as soon as Tovia's performance was finished, the two drove back to Denver. Maggie was in such a daze over what had happened at the fake seance that she didn't remember the drive home or even going to bed that night. The following evening, Maggie went about her normal routine. She made her grandmother her chicken soup dinner, who then pulled out the same photo albums, told the same stories, and read the same old newspaper. After Maggie put her grandmother to bed, she went downstairs to the basement, brushed her teeth, put on her pajamas, and crawled into bed. There are 4 rooms in the basement, but there are no doors separating them, only doorways. So you can see into each of the rooms from Maggie's bed. So the 25-year-old was lying awake in bed just thinking about life when she looked over into the next room, and there he was, the shadow man she had conjured up at the seance. And Maggie said, quote, I was like, damn it, what has happened? Like, this dude followed me home. Like, I knew this was going to happen. End quote.
This wasn't worth the $250.
Girl. She didn't know what to do. She knew she'd made a huge mistake and there was nothing she could do. And now this thing was in her house. And the craziest thing is that it wasn't even haunting her per se, but Maggie said that it was looking at her like, you saw me. Can you see me now?
Hi, hello.
Hi, you can see me, hi. She said, quote, so I just laid there super uncomfortable, trying not to look at it, just like being really mad at myself. Like, I confused this thing. Maybe it was just like really lonely and all of a sudden saw that I was looking at it. And now it's like, well, why aren't you interacting with me more or interacting with me again? And I didn't want to interact with it. I just wanted it to go away. So I just felt bad, felt like really guilty. And I think it probably took me a really, really long time to go to sleep. But eventually I did. And then in the morning, he was gone, end quote. And this went on for 3 months.
No.
Every night, Maggie would go downstairs into the basement and he would be there hovering in the room next to her, looking at her. She said, quote, I kind of like got weirdly used to it. I didn't want to get used to it. I think I just kind of like took it as like, this is the way it is. Like, I live with my grandma. I live in this like creepy old basement. I'm super isolated out here. I have no internet or TV and just have this ghost that lives in my room. And I have to be okay with it because that's where I am at this point in my life. And it's not going to change, end quote. But that doesn't mean that Maggie was okay with it. She didn't want to go home and face the shadow man. So she spent less and less time at her grandmother's house. She would be out all day, come back for a little bit to make her grandmother dinner. Then she would leave again and stay out all night. And Maggie hated it. She loved her grandmother and wanted to take care of her. But now she was spending less time with her to avoid the thing waiting for her in the basement. So you might be like, Maggie, priest party, pronto.
Yes.
But she said, quote, I didn't want to try to do anything about it either because I had already got myself into this mess by messing around with things that I didn't know anything about. Like, I didn't want to try and start some sort of banishing ritual or anything because what would happen then? End quote. Which, I mean, given what's happened so far, is fair. A few months passed, and one day Maggie was hanging out with some friends at the tea house. a nonprofit organization focused on coupling housing security, artistry, and mentorship through a collective house. A collective house is a type of intentional community where residents share living space and resources, fostering a strong sense of collaboration and community-oriented living. Maggie's good friend Abby was living at the tea house at the time. So Maggie would go over there a lot, and they would just chill and listen to music and drink beers on the porch and just hang out. So one day, Maggie was hanging out on the porch of the tea house, and the rest of her friends were inside. So she was on the porch by herself when she saw a man walking up the street. She said, quote, I knew he was probably coming up to the tea house because he looked like a total weirdo, like long hair, raggedy, like black clothes, big piercings, tattoos, probably like a heavy metal shirt on, end quote. So it seems like these is the type of people who lived at the tea house.
It's the vibe, yeah.
That's the vibe. And Maggie noticed that he was carrying a big black plastic trash bag, which she figured was just filled with his clothes. Sure enough, the man walks up to the house and Maggie greets him. She says hi and asks him if he's meeting up with people at the tea house. And he says yes, and he introduces himself, and he tells her that his name is Kevin. Then Maggie asks, what's in the bag? And he tells her a goat head.
Oh, cool. Paper mache, let's hope.
Nope. And she's like, what? Get the fuck out of here. And he asks her if she wants to see it. And she says, quote, well, yeah, like, of course I want to see it, end quote. Because also she'd never met this guy before, and she thought that he was fucking with her.
Yeah, I would too. I'd be like, yeah, no, you're full of shit.
So Kevin walks over to where Maggie was sitting and opened up the bag, and there was a fucking goat head in the fucking bag.
Get off the porch, bro.
Right, meow, please and thank you. So Maggie asked him what he was going to do with it, and he told her that he was going to use it to do black magic.
Yeah, that tracks.
Yeah. And while anyone else would be like, okay, dude, have a good one, and like, nope the fuck out of there, Maggie said that it wasn't that unusual for this kind of thing to happen at the tea house, as it attracted all kinds of eccentric people. In fact, for Maggie, that was the draw. She liked hanging out at the tea house because she felt like anything could happen at any time. So the two chatted for a bit, and he told her what he was going to do with the goat head when he suddenly paused, gave Maggie a strange look, and asked her if he could read her cards. Maggie said, quote, I was like, well, yeah, like, of course I want this guy who walked off the street with a goat head in a bag to read my tarot cards. Like, that sounds incredible. So I was like, okay, yeah, let's do it. End quote.
Yeah, I'd be here for the story too. Like, let's fucking go.
For sure. Because who knows, but like, it's going to be a great story. But at the same time, I'm like, I hope that my head doesn't end up in that fucking bag. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Girl.
Goats only, please.
So Maggie and Kevin went inside, and he set the bag down, and the two went down to the basement of the tea house. Nobody was living in the basement there at the time, so it was just a big empty cement room. And Maggie said that the two didn't really talk. She was more curious to see where this whole thing was going because of the aforementioned goat head for the black magic ritual thing. They sat down on the floor, and Kevin pulled out a deck of tarot cards from his pocket and did a small 3-card spread. Maggie recalled that the reading was very brief and that Kevin told her, it looks like there's something dark in your life. Like something has like either attached itself to you or you let something in and it's not good for you and you need to get rid of it immediately. And Maggie was shocked. She was like, do you know me? Like, and what's going on with me? And Kevin told her, obviously, no, as they had just met moments ago. But that Kevin was able to pick up on what Maggie had been going through with the shadow man scared the shit out of her, to the point that when she went back upstairs to the main house, she was too freaked out to talk to anybody and she just went home. So that evening, Maggie went about her daily routine. She fed her grandmother and stayed up watching what Maggie described as, quote, some horrible like Christian and evangelical stuff on TV, end quote, with her grandmother until she went to bed and Maggie was too tired to stay awake. So she went downstairs to the basement. She laid down in her bed, turned out the lights, and she immediately felt the entity. But this time, it had come into her room.
Oh.
It had always stayed in the other room.
Nope. No, thank you.
And she would see it from her bed in the open doorway, but it had never come into her room until tonight. And Maggie said that it started making her feel sick. Like, she was going to throw up. She said, quote, "The way that I understood it was that it was pissed that I was about to try and get rid of it. It was like, no, like you can't get rid of me. I don't want to go anywhere," end quote. And the closer it got, the more Maggie believed that if she didn't do something, the entity was going to try and possess her. She said, quote, "It was like this man that was pissed off but couldn't physically assault me was just kind of like trapped in this vibrational existence, kind of like static," end quote. Maggie laid in her bed frozen for about an hour, and she got more nauseous as the vibrations were getting louder and angrier. And she was terrified and she didn't know what to do and was certain that it was going to try and possess her because it didn't want Maggie to make him go away. So Maggie started meditating. She had previously been told that whenever you're afraid of something, to envision something else in your life that most people are scared of, but that you aren't. Maggie grew up in South Texas, and they had rattlesnakes all over the house she grew up in. She said that they would literally come inside the house.
Oh, no.
No fucking thank you. And that everyone in her family was really scared of them, but she never was. So she would be the one who would always sweep up the snakes into a bucket and throw them back out in the yard. So Maggie envisioned turning the entity into a rattlesnake, sweeping him into a bucket, and taking him out into the desert in eastern Colorado and setting him free. She was like, quote, "I can't help you move on, but I can set you free, like into this place where you'll be okay," end quote. And as she started imagining the scene, she felt that the entity was no longer getting closer to her. She said, quote, "But it was obviously like giving me a lot of really bad energy, putting really bad energy out towards me, like really just like frustrated, lonely, sad energy towards me. And I just kept my eyes closed and kept doing the meditation and being like as kind and loving as I possibly could and not like putting any like anger back towards it because I didn't want it to feel like I was pissed off at it being there. I just wanted it to leave me alone," end quote. So she kept her eyes closed and just envisioned this meditation over and over all night for like 7 hours until the sun came up.
Damn. That is some fucking dedication.
Yeah. I've also never heard of that concept.
Yeah. But I love that.
Yeah, me too.
Tucking that in the back pocket.
100%. When she got out of bed, he was gone. Not only that, she felt better. She wasn't shaking and she didn't feel nauseous anymore. She described it like waking up from a really bad nightmare, that she was physically exhausted but happy to be awake. She was pretty sure that the man had moved on, at minimum, had moved on from her. Either way, she never saw the Shadow Man again. These days, Maggie's back in San Antonio, where she runs a 5-acre farm with her partner, Josh. The couple spends their time running the business, growing vegetables, and selling them at locals' farmers markets around the city and making dinner for their friends. Maggie has never performed another seance, real or for show, again, and offers a stern warning for those who are looking to dabble in things they don't understand, saying, quote, "I just wanted to do something silly and performative for $250, and instead it scared the crap out of me for 4 months and affected me for the rest of my life up until now. Don't ever do something involving paranormal activities for money unless you're like a really well-trained professional. But you know, human curiosity is an incredibly powerful thing. So I don't blame anybody if they want to do that. But you know, don't be surprised if the shit hits the fan," end quote. And that is the story of when Maggie was hired to put on a fake seance and accidentally conjured up something from beyond the veil.
Oh my God.
Girl!
I loved that so much.
Right? What the fuck?
That's insane.
Yes!
Don't fuck around with shit you don't understand. Even if you don't believe in it. Like,
100%!
that's always my thing. Like, I don't, you know.
There's that video of that guy being like, the more you fuck around, the more you find out. Yeah, girl.
Facts.
That's how that goes.
4 months, dude? No.
Girl, I couldn't imagine.
No. That's awful.
Yeah.
I'm glad she got rid of it, though. That was such an interesting trick.
I know. Definitely, like you said, keeping it in the back pocket for sure.
Yeah.
Hopefully never have to use it.
Yes. Same. The power of the mind, though.
Girl.
It's a crazy thing.
Yeah.
I love that so much. I love Otherworld so much.
They're great.
Yeah, they're really great. Thank you so much for that story. I mean, I had
Of
a
course.
little snake action. You know, I love snakes.
You know what? I didn't even fucking realize that shit. You do love snakes.
I do love snakes. I would not be blasé about a rattlesnake, though, as much as I love them.
No.
Like, no.
No, girl. Absolutely
No.
the fuck not.
I'm not sweeping it up into a bucket. No.
I don't like any snakes. They all scare me.
It's fair. I get it. But like, no, that one can fuck you up.
100%.
Maggie, you're braver than I am. Kudos to you.
100%. Holy shit. And then, especially since it was like so silly.
Yeah, spearing the things in her face and that it's like, oh, shit just got real.
Yeah. Fuck.
I can't imagine how terrifying that was in the moment.
Oh my God.
And then you can't like tell her and be like, okay, I was like faking it before, but like,
I'm like, it's real now.
something's here. Like, this is not, I'm not faking it. This is real.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Fuck.
But yeah, that party sounds awesome.
Oh yeah, 100%. I love this. I love this. Obviously. We basically did like a mini version of this for a Cute and Creepy weekend last year.
That's very true.
Because I love all this.
That was amazing. Thank you so much for that.
Of course. Thank you. And now we're going into Amy's true crime den. Do I need to brace myself?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I tried to keep it pretty light this week.
Okay.
I felt bad because Donna said she kind of stopped listening to the true crime section because it was too much. And then I was like, oh gosh. So this is on the lighter side. There is a murder, but like
okay. It is the true crime.
It is the true crime section. But I, again, think it's pretty light, especially for a story from me. Let's be real.
Facts.
No cannibals. I promise, guys.
There you go. That's the baseline.
Yeah. So, sources. Excerpts from a book by Canadian journalist Byron Christopher, the title of which I'll reveal at the end. Pulling a Monique on this one. Secret sources.
Secret sources. Love them.
As well as the author's website, byronchristopher.org. All That's Interesting, Minot Daily News, NBC News, and Wikipedia. Richard Lee McNair was born in Altus, Oklahoma on December 19th, 1958, to Air Force Sergeant James McNair and his wife, Wileen, who would go on to have 3 more sons together. The family eventually moved to a farm just outside of Duncan, and Richard had a typical country childhood. He grew up fishing and riding dirt bikes and learned to swim in the swimming hole on their property. After Richard graduated from high school, he sold cars for a living, but eventually he decided to steal one in Lawton with a friend. They drove it to Duncan and burned it.
Yikes.
He was caught, but since it was his first offense, his lawyer was able to get him probation and a 2-year deferred sentence. Police also suspected that Richard had stolen a safe from the Public Service Company in Duncan in 1978. According to authorities, the safe was hauled away in a stolen company truck to the McNair farm. However, the assistant district attorney felt there wasn't enough evidence, and Richard was never charged. In June 1980, 21-year-old Richard married his high school sweetheart, 19-year-old Dorothy Jones. But the marriage was short-lived, and the two separated after only a year and a half. However, the split was amicable, and the two remained friends afterwards. Dorothy said he was a good husband and had never been violent, but that the two argued often. She just felt they'd gotten married too young. Not to mention, Dorothy wanted children, and Richard emphatically did not. So much so that he got a vasectomy in his early 20s.
Damn.
Yeah.
You need to have this convo before we're getting married and shit.
Yeah. But also, like, I kind of respect the move. Like, fucking do it.
For sure.
Go for it.
Yeah, but you can't be like,
but not
"They're
if
gonna
you're
change
getting
their mind."
married with someone who really wants children. Correct.
Yeah, no, you can't be doing that.
No. In June 1982, Richard, wanting to see the world, left Oklahoma to join the Air Force. He was sent to Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas, and started security specialist training, aka military police. He was schooled in booby traps, flares, fields of fire, throwing grenades, firing a grenade launcher, maneuvering as a team under fire, setting up and detecting ambushes, night fighting tactics, and, if all else failed, escape and evasion. He also learned how to navigate with a map and compass, as well as how to use the terrain in unexpected ways. After basic training, Richard was assigned to Minot Air Force Base in North Dakota, which was far from his first choice.
Mhm.
He wanted to go to a cool foreign base, somewhere like Greece or Spain or France, and said he actually cried when he stepped off the plane into the freezing cold wind and snow.
Oh my God, I can imagine.
He spent the first 3 years guarding the 150 nuclear missiles stored on site underground, but also had a few part-time jobs while he was there, including working the overnight shifts at a convenience store, refurbishing trailers, and DJing at a country music station. In 1984, Richard received top marks in every category on his military evaluation. His superiors spoke highly of him and his performance, and he was eventually promoted to sergeant. He also occasionally did undercover work for the Air Force Base and Minot Police Department. Despite his successful military career, however, Richard decided to start breaking into businesses in town in the fall of 1987.
Oof.
Yep, he'd rifle through desks and filing cabinets and would break into the odd safe occasionally. But he rarely made off with much. One break-in netted him $375, or a little over $1,000 a day. Another, a VCR. At Smith Rolls, an industrial equipment supplier, he made off with a new air compressor. At Aeroblock and Cement, he stole $145 and a set of Snap-on screwdrivers. At Foley Equipment, he got $150 and several rolls of 22-cent stamps. He would store the stolen goods in a storage unit he'd rented under the name Lee Richards. But for Richard, it wasn't about the haul. He was making decent money at the time, so what little cash he made off with was just extra pocket money for him. He said he just enjoyed the adrenaline rush of getting into the building. Although the crime scenes were messy and size 11 shoe prints were found, the police were unable to catch the thief because, despite his disregard for the state of the crime scenes, Richard was actually pretty smart about the break-ins and took precautions not to get caught. He'd park his car at a nearby bar, which wouldn't attract attention, and would set up a radar detector in a window facing the business's driveway, which would beep if any police cruisers with their radar on drove past, which I've never heard before and I think is fucking brilliant.
Yeah.
Did your parents ever have a radar detector in the car? Or were they
No.
law-abiding citizens? Okay, cool. Just making sure.
Law abiding.
Yeah. Both my parents loved to speed and had radar detectors, so I remember this well.
No, definitely not. My parents definitely didn't have that. Mm-mm. Probably because realistically, they were probably really unsightly.
Yeah, they weren't cute. And then it had the big curling, coiled wire. Yeah.
They were not about that life.
No.
My dad's not going to put that in his Porsche.
That's fair.
Yeah.
That's fair. Richard always wore gloves, would cover the windows with tar paper to block the light from his flashlight, and screw some of the doors closed so they couldn't be opened while he was distracted. He also cased the businesses in advance and would place clear tape on the doors overnight to see if people came in during off hours. On November 17th, 1987, Richard broke into the offices of the Farmers Union elevator in East Minot around 9 p.m., which is the big grain elevators.
Oh, okay.
If you don't know and you're not from the Midwest. So,
yeah.
He rummaged through desk drawers, closets, and cupboards, grabbing a toolbox, a dozen chocolate bars, and a set of keys before making his way to the main office area where he knew there was a small safe hidden. But it was blocked by a security gate with steel bars. He tried the keys, but none of them worked, so he ended up hot-wiring the electrical switch to open it. But things weren't really going well. He broke the claw of his hammer, getting the safe out of the cabinet, and was struggling to get the safe open with the broken tool. He was also dealing with an upset stomach at the time and had to stop multiple times to use the bathroom.
Girl, this is not the day to rob some shit.
Thank you.
Stay at home.
Literally the first instance of this.
The first grumble, you're like, abandon ship.
I'd be like, you know what? It's not even worth it. I'm going
100%.
home. No, thank you.
You're like, you're doing this while you have the fucking runs? Bro, what are you doing?
Yes.
Not only that, that's like evidence that you're leaving behind, basically.
Correct, because
girl,
thank you. He did not flush because he didn't want the sound to attract any attention.
Girl,
no.
Are you new here? What the fuck are you doing?
I'm out.
Girl, no. Mm-mm.
A little before 10 p.m., things went from bad to worse. when 31-year-old elevator employee Richard Kitzman arrived at the office. He'd agreed to help Jerry Thies, a 47-year-old Army vet turned truck driver, fill a late-night load of grain. When Kitzman entered the office, he noticed the security gate was up, but didn't think anything of it, since it wasn't unusual for employees to forget to put it down.
That's why it's there, though.
Yeah, it's a small town, I get it. But as he started turning on the lights in the office, he saw some of the desk drawers had been opened and that there were papers strewn about. He immediately knew that someone had broken into the office, but he didn't realize they were still there. McNair was standing in the dark on the other side of the swinging doors, about 10 feet behind Kitzman. Also, I'm switching to their last names because they're both Richard.
Right, got it.
And even though Richard Kitzman goes by Dick, I don't want to say Dick.
Understood.
Repeatedly. Yes.
Not that kind of show.
Yeah. Also, now clearly McNair is the criminal, and I feel like it's more responsible to call him by his last name.
Mm-hmm.
McNair hadn't planned or wanted to kill anyone, but said, quote, "The anger that erupted upon being discovered was beyond belief," end quote. He pulled out his .38 snub-nose revolver, aimed at Kitzman's head, and shot at him through the glass window in the door. The bullet grazed the man's cheek below his ear, and he fell to the floor, clutching his face. McNair then fired 4 more shots while standing over him.
Holy fuck.
One went through his wrist, another went through his thigh and into his calf, and 2 of the shots missed completely. Fearing for his life, Kitzman slowed his breathing and played dead. McNair believed the act and, assuming he'd killed the man, collected the bullet casings, grabbed his tools, and prepared to leave. He reloaded his revolver and stepped outside where Jerry was waiting in the grain truck, eating ice cream and listening to music. McNair had assumed that Kitzman was the truck driver, but when Jerry dimmed the headlights as a courtesy so as not to blind him, McNair realized that there was another witness to his crime. He approached the truck and fired 5 times at the driver.
Jesus.
Kitzman was already on the phone with 911 when he heard the shots, but Jerry Thies was killed instantly. The father of 3 and stepfather of 5, described as happy-go-lucky and a wonderful man, died just 2 weeks before his 48th birthday.
Damn.
Police arrived 4 minutes later, and Kitzman was rushed to the hospital. The Minot PD tactical team began to search the premises, but by that time, McNair had already picked up his blue Dodge Ram from a nearby bar and was driving back to town. Police initially believed the killer had escaped in a white 2-door Ford car, but later changed it to a white or cream Pontiac, since a vehicle matching that description was seen leaving the area around the time of the shooting.
Mm-hmm.
When McNair returned home, he immediately showered and washed his clothes. He then took the boots he'd worn that night, as well as the spent rounds and pistol, to the storage shed. His girlfriend Carolyn stopped by after she got off work. She was a nursing assistant at Trinity Hospital and was there when Kitzman was brought into the emergency room. She said Richard seemed nervous that night. When she asked him why, he told her there was a killer on the loose. But she never imagined it was him. She described him as thoughtful and kind-hearted, although admitted he was a bit of a thrill seeker.
Can you imagine that shit?
No. Girl. It's insane. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Together, they watched the local news reports about the murder and subsequent manhunt. There were no fingerprints found at the scene, but police once again found shoe prints that matched the ones from some of the other recent break-ins, specifically the ones found at Smith Rolls where the air compressor had been stolen. The Citizens Reward Fund Committee offered an $18,000 reward for any information leading to the arrest of the killer, and Kitzman's employer offered an extra $5,000. But the case went unsolved for months. A police sketch of the culprit was posted all over Minot, and several people, including police and Air Force personnel, had commented to McNair that the sketch looked kind of like him.
Girl.
But he was charming. He always laughed it off and joked that they should turn him in for the reward money. Then, in February of 1988, Paula Lyles, who worked for the company that operated the storage units, got fed up with Lee Richards, aka McNair's, lack of payment and decided to open his unit, hoping they could sell whatever was inside to help recover the company's losses.
Girl.
Yep. Which
Mm-mm.
McNair in the book claims that he sent a money order to them for this payment. He actually never missed his payment, but that it got lost in the mail or something.
Boom. Good.
Yep.
That's karma, baby. That'll
Yep.
do it.
But when she opened it, she thought the stuff inside looked suspiciously unpaid for. There
Mhm.
were 7 rolls of carpet with the tag still on and a computer and keyboard still in the box.
Like, this is what's crazy to me. It's like he's stealing this shit literally for the fuck of it.
Yeah.
Because it's
Literally,
not like, oh,
it's literally for the thrill. He didn't need the money. He had a good job.
and it's not even like, I like that, I'm going to put it in my house. It's like, no, it's literally going to be in a storage unit. It's costing him money because he has to pay for the fucking storage unit.
Yeah. He would use some of the stuff. Like, he would use the carpets in, like, because he renovated trailers, and he would, like, use the carpets in that. And he, like, gave some stuff to a friend. And, like, but again, he's just doing it for the fuck of it.
Girl. And he killed someone for the fuck of it, too.
Yes. That is the heartbreaking part of this. Because one of the police officers, I feel like, mentions that he, like, could have just left. Like, he could have waited
Yeah.
until he passed by and then booked it out the door.
Yeah.
But, like, he didn't want to get caught and he didn't want to leave any witnesses. Yeah. He just said he couldn't really, he just flew into a rage. It didn't abate. He was just, like, doing what he needed to do. It's fucked up. Not justifying it.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's going to get crazy.
Oh my God. Okay.
The box for the computer and keyboard had a label that said it was from the Minot Air Base, so she decided to give them a call. She was put through to Steve Whitesell, a security police investigator at the base who also worked at the Minot Police Department. Paula asked if he knew of Lee Richards. There was no Lee Richards employed at the base, but the name still rang a bell with Whitesell. He checked the roster, and Richard Lee McNair's name jumped out at him. He had recently investigated McNair after he was found with stolen radio equipment from the base. Though he was ultimately found not guilty, McNair was demoted from sergeant to senior airman due to the suspected theft. The social security number Paula had for Lee Richards was only 1 digit off from McNair's actual number.
Girl.
Paula asked if the man had a southern accent. Whitesell confirmed that he did. She described his vehicle and mentioned he'd had a cut on his left hand the last time she'd seen him. McNair's vehicle matched the description she gave. And in December, Richard had gotten into a fight with a young airman at a party who was pouring beer on the carpet and refused to stop. He'd received 6 stitches to his left hand at the military hospital afterwards and was left with a scar. They believed McNair had rented the unit under a fake name and suspected he may have been responsible for the recent string of burglaries and the murder of Jerry Thies. Police searched the storage unit shortly after and found some papers with Richard McNair's name on them. They also found 38 caliber shell casings and a brand new air compressor. They believed it was the one that had been stolen from Smith Rolls a few months earlier. The Air Force told McNair that the police wanted to talk to him about a drug bust and asked him to come down to the station. He assumed they just wanted to use his services for some more undercover work. But when they began to question him about the burglaries, he realized he'd been caught. Ironically, he'd already given his notice with the Air Force and had been only about a week away from moving to Arizona.
Damn.
He refused to talk to anyone but a lawyer. Shortly after, the detectives left for their weekly luncheon with other area law enforcement, leaving McNair handcuffed to a chair in the station. As he watched the remaining officers doing their paperwork, he plotted his escape. He used a lip balm he had in his pocket to coat his wrist enough to slip out of the handcuffs. McNair calmly stood up, then bolted for the door. The officers immediately chased after him. He slammed the door on one, crushing her hip and hand. Another lost his footing on the curb and fractured his heel. As McNair ran up a stairway leading to the parking lot of the Minot Municipal Auditorium and Armory, he stole a camouflage jacket from a coat rack on his way out. In the pocket was a set of keys bearing a Lincoln emblem, and a few seconds later, McNair was behind the wheel. Police cruisers had blocked off the exits to the parking lot, but when they saw the driver of the Lincoln was wearing a camouflage jacket, They
Mm,
assumed he was one of them, and they backed away to allow him to exit.
girl.
Yep. A few minutes later, the stolen Lincoln died on the road near the post office. There was a highway patrol trooper behind him, but McNair, cool as a cucumber, stepped out of the Lincoln, pounded on its roof in disgust, and gave a friendly wave to the trooper. The trooper, unaware that a fugitive was on the loose, simply drove around him. When the detectives at lunch got the call that McNair had escaped, they immediately joined the chase. McNair continued on foot, heading toward a large house that he knew was vacant. A man saw him pass by, and unluckily for McNair, he happened to be a reporter heading to the scene of his escape. He called the police, who quickly surrounded the vacant house. In one last-ditch effort to escape, McNair tried to jump from the 3-story house to a nearby tree, but the branch broke and he landed hard on his back. He was placed under arrest and taken to Trinity Hospital for injuries sustained from the fall. He feigned paralysis, but when one of the officers assigned to watch him caught him trying to get out of his leg restraints, they realized he was faking, and he was immediately transferred to the Ward County Jail. Police searched his residence and a trailer he'd been working on renovating. They found more of the stolen goods and boots that matched the shoe prints found at the crime scenes, including the grain elevator where Thies had been killed. They were able to track down the murder weapon, which McNair had sold to a friend. Ballistic analysis showed that the slugs removed from Thies's body matched the rounds fired from the gun. They cleaned out McNair's storage unit, but hadn't gotten a search warrant first, so they were ordered to put everything back, get a
Damn.
warrant, then clean it out again, which, like, I didn't know you could do.
100%.
Because who's to say you're not putting shit back in there that wasn't already in there?
Correct. That's why all that shit is very like, you gotta do. That's why shit gets fucking thrown out for technical shit all the time.
Yep.
That's why fucking Bill Cosby's out on the fucking street over some technicality bullshit.
Insane.
Yeah.
However, despite that colossal fuck up,
Mm-hmm.
McNair's lawyer still advised him to confess to the crimes due to the amount of evidence against him and told him he'd do 14 to 20 years. McNair, who said he was ashamed of what he'd done, agreed to the plea deal and admitted to the break-ins and that he'd shot Kitzman and Thies. Quote, "I am such a monster to have done what I did.
Mm-hmm.
If North Dakota had the death penalty, I would have qualified and deserved it." End quote. He said his anger got the best of him when he realized he'd been caught. Quote, "My anger cannot be blamed on anyone other than me. I'm not an idiot. I realize what I did. I will never make excuses for my actions." End quote. But while he didn't make excuses for his actions, he did try to escape again.
Of course.
In case you can't tell, there's a theme here.
Yes. I'm noticing a pattern.
Yep. While he was being held in the Ward County Jail, he removed one of the blocks from his cell wall, leaving a hole just big enough for him to fit through if he stripped naked. He then crawled through the air vents, but realized he would need a tool to cut through the sheet metal of the air handling unit before he could make it out. He returned to his cell, determined to try again, but before he could, he was assigned to another cell and his escape attempt was thwarted. McNair pleaded guilty to murder and attempted murder and received 2 life sentences in the state penitentiary in Bismarck, North Dakota. He had no idea that his lawyer called the deputy warden of the prison and warned them that he would try to escape, and if he had to kill someone to do it, he would.
Obviously. Yeah. Wow, that's a good lawyer. Like an honorable one.
An honorable one. It's
what I mean.
a shitty lawyer to have for yourself. Because of this, McNair was placed in solitary confinement for 2 weeks upon his arrival on July 22nd, 1988. During his time in prison, McNair took college classes until they stopped offering them to prisoners, participated in the Scared Straight program with at-risk kids, sat with inmates on suicide watch, recorded textbooks for the sight impaired, worked on the prison newspaper, and was a member of Toastmasters, which helped inmates develop communication and leadership skills. However, McNair said everything he did was declared as quote-unquote gaming the system. Basically, that it was all an act to make it appear as though he was a changed man.
I like get it though.
Yep. Yep. So in April 1991, he and another prisoner, Rondell Heitch, started planning an escape through the exhaust vent in the metal shop where they both worked. Girl,
You're like, I changed, really. No, you're not gonna give me my shit? Fine, fuck
fine,
you.
I'm
gonna go
leaving. Bye.
Girl, that's not how that works at all.
Yep. They somehow managed to convince their supervisor to purchase a plasma cutter for the shop, which they used to cut through the bars, blocking them from making it through the vent.
Girl.
Yep. The day before they planned to escape, McNair told another inmate who worked in the shop of their plans. Not wanting the man to get in trouble, McNair told him he either needed to stay away the next day or he could come with them. The man agreed to join their escape, but immediately turned them in. The cut bars were discovered and the two were busted. They were sent to solitary for 30 days and time was added to their sentences. Despite this, however, McNair was more determined to escape than ever. And on October 9th, 1992, he and Heitch made their second attempt. They were joined this time by another prisoner named Rick Holland. The three men grabbed parkas, water, and blankets to throw over the barbed wire fence and once again made their way into the exhaust vents in the ceiling. Heitch used a saw blade to cut through the padlock of the access hatch to the roof of the cell house, and the three men made their way along the fences until they got to where the outside perimeter fence joined the west cell house. From there, they dropped down to the roof of the visiting room on the other side of the fence. The guards working in the room heard their footsteps on the roof, and Captain Linda Luer went to investigate. She saw the three of them running across the roof and yelled for them to stop. She didn't have a gun on her, but immediately radioed in the escape. The three men dropped from the roof to the ground and ran through what was known as the kill zone. However, the guards did not open fire. The men made it across the expressway and split up. A manhunt was immediately launched. The National Guard flew choppers over the area, while military police and prison guards searched on the ground. Within hours, they had found Rick Holland, who had twisted his ankle when he dropped from the roof, and he surrendered without a fight. Both McNair and Heitch remained at large. Roadblocks were set up, and freight trains were stopped and searched. Heitch stole a pickup truck, but was recognized in a small town south of Bismarck the following day and captured by police. But McNair's military training in escape and evasion paid off, and he continued to elude law enforcement. He stole a truck and a uniform from a plumbing company and drove to South Dakota. He stopped for a few hours at a motel and ordered a pizza, both of which he somehow convinced them to charge to the plumbing company.
Okay.
Afterwards, he stole new license plates from a shop truck at a Chevy dealership and drove to Minnesota, then Wisconsin. There, he started selling off whatever equipment was in the truck. He continued driving east and made it all the way to West Virginia, more than 1,300 miles in the stolen truck. A week or two later, his escape was featured on Unsolved Mysteries, and locals in West Virginia reported that he'd been seen there. Despite this, McNair continued to elude the authorities and remained on the run for the next 9 months.
Damn.
He took odd jobs and moved from town to town, state to state.
But also, what a fucking awful existence. You
Yeah.
can't chill out for a second. You always are looking over your shoulder. Like, I feel like, fuck it. Let me just do my time and I'll just get the fuck out of here when I get out.
Yes. And like, I couldn't get into them all because the story is already incredibly long, but like he had a lot of like scares where like
Yeah.
an officer was behind him and then he like was like, oh my God, are they following me? Do they know? It like turned off, went into a neighborhood. They were still following him. He was like, oh fuck, oh fuck, oh fuck. And then like they literally just like turned into one of the driveways in the neighborhood. And he was like, oh my God, okay, thank God.
But like you can't like create any sort of relationships. You have to be careful about everything you say. Like it's like, oh my
Yeah.
God. It's exhausting.
Yeah. And apparently like while he was in West Virginia right before he left, like he basically like got adopted by like the locals, like the local like Masons Club kind of or something similar to that. Like invited him to a party and they like got him a haircut and everyone was like talking to him and he had like this wonderful time with them and then immediately had to leave town.
Yeah.
And like got featured on Unsolved Mysteries like 2 weeks later.
Damn.
Yeah. And then like everyone from that town was like,
I know that
hi.
guy.
Yeah, we were just partying with him. My bad. Sorry. We didn't know.
Yeah.
He seemed nice.
He basically needs to live off the grid if he's doing this shit.
Yeah.
I also understand it's the 90s, which, like, you know, there's obviously less surveillance and police stateliness than now.
Yes. So originally his plan was to hike the Appalachian Trail, but when he went to talk to someone about it, the woman was like, "Oh yeah, there's like a serial killer on the loose there apparently right now." And he was like, "Well, I don't want to go where they're looking for a serial killer, so like I'm going to fuck off. Never mind." At one point, he even visited his mother in his hometown of Duncan. But on July 5th, 1993, he was seen breaking into a Pontiac dealership in Grand Island, Nebraska. The police were called and he was taken in for questioning. When his fingerprints were taken, the jig was up. McNair was charged with escaping lawful custody and sent back to the state penitentiary in Bismarck. The state wanted to give him 15 consecutive years for the escape.
Damn.
Yeah, but his new lawyer managed to get him only one.
Okay.
I don't know if I support it, but like that's worth the money. Like that's what a lawyer is supposed to do. He's also serving 2 life sentences already. So like,
right, exactly. Yeah. So at that point, the year of the 14 doesn't actually mean shit.
Afterward, he was sent to the maximum security prison at Oak Park Heights, Minnesota, and later transferred to a maximum security federal prison in Pollock, Louisiana. But if you thought for 1 second that McNair had given up on trying to escape,
girl,
you'd be wrong.
Girl.
He was already planning his next escape.
Jesus Christ.
Yep. And even borrowed a book from the prison library called Hide Your Assets and Disappear.
Why is that in the prison library, girl?
Thank you. A step-by-step guide to vanishing without a trace. Correct.
Girl, why is that in the prison library?
Insane. Someone fucked up on that, I feel like. Yeah.
100%.
Unsurprisingly, it has since been removed.
Yes. I would fucking hope so.
McNair's job at the prison in Louisiana was to repair mailbags for the U.S. Postal Service. Hundreds of mailbags would be stacked on pallets on the floor, shrink wrapped, and shipped out, which gave him a brilliant idea for his escape. In April of 2006, McNair put his plan into action and built a pallet of mailbags with a hiding spot inside. He made a frame using metal rods and zip ties for support, installed a breathing tube, and stashed food, water, first aid supplies, toilet paper, some clothing, and a map inside. On April 5th, he told his boss and a couple of the prisoners that he was going to medical, but that the supervisor wanted the pallets, including his, to go out on the next transport. When no one was looking, he ducked under a table and crawled into the pallet through a tiny entrance on the side. He hid the entrance with a piece of cardboard covered with a mailbag. He was cramped and sweating from the heat, but he could feel the pallet being transported. At one point, he heard a guard comment that his pallet looked suspicious and then felt them inspect it. But they didn't remove the shrink wrap and eventually decided it was fine.
Girl.
He remained inside for 30 minutes, waiting for his opportunity to escape. He had no idea if anyone would be around when he emerged or where in the warehouse he would be, but he had to take his chances, and luck was on his side. When he finally crawled out of his hiding spot, there was no one around. He crawled to the open warehouse door. Then, not wanting to draw attention to himself, he calmly walked out of the building and made his way to a nearby wooded area. No one saw him and no alarms were sounded. But McNair knew that wouldn't last long. He focused on putting as much distance between himself and the prison as he could. He once again used his military training in escape and evasion to good use. He laid a confusing scent trail for the bloodhounds he knew they send after him and planted decoys. He changed out of his prison clothes and into a tank top and gym shorts, then left his prison uniform for the dogs to find. He peed on a rag and tossed it into some trees. He also knew that one of the best ways to disguise your scent was to rub pine needles on your skin, so he did that continuously. He also tried to remain calm and keep his sweating to a minimum, so as not to cause more odor, and he used the terrain to his advantage. At 12:50 p.m., a worker at the warehouse spotted a gray sweatshirt hanging from underneath the pallet that had arrived from the pen that morning. When he realized it had an opening big enough for a man to squeeze through, he called the guards. They found clothes, a water bottle, a razor blade, and the breathing tube inside, and immediately suspected they might have an escaped prisoner on their hands. When they did a prisoner count and realized McNair, their resident escape artist, was missing, they sounded the alarm and the search for him began.
Girl, they need to like fucking Hannibal Lecter this guy.
Right? Like,
What the fuck?
Also, like at this, we're just putting a tracking device on you. Like, I'm sorry, you can't be trusted.
100%.
Yeah. The inmates were put on lockdown, and guards immediately searched the prison since they weren't sure he'd actually even left and thought he might have just been hiding for all they knew. A command post was set up at the prison, and a team of bloodhounds arrived at USP Pollock. At 2:07 p.m., a fax was sent to local law enforcement, including the Ball, Louisiana Police Department. The heading of the fax read, "Notice of Escaped Federal Prisoner." Shockingly, the U.S. Marshal Service, whose, whole job it is to apprehend fugitives, was the last law enforcement agency to be informed of McNair's escape.
Girl.
Yeah. And this is going to be just one of many blunders in this situation. Yep. Because the prison fax was filled with bad information. Not only did it have an outdated picture of McNair on it, the tiny black and white passport-sized photograph was not only old but hard to make out, but the fax said McNair had scars on his left wrist, but they'd long since faded. It also stated he was wearing his prison uniform and not wearing glasses, both of which were not true. Just before 4 p.m., McNair reached a railroad crossing on the northern edge of the community of Tioga. A few minutes later, Officer Carl Bordelon, who was working general patrol, drove by and spotted McNair. He stopped him to question him, and the interaction was caught on Bordelon's dash cam. The two chatted for about 10 minutes. McNair told the officer his name was Robert Jones, and he was just out for a jog, that he was from Dallas and in the area roofing with his younger brother. The officer told McNair they were looking for an escapee. McNair feigned surprise and said he didn't even know there was a prison nearby. Bordelon commented that McNair looked remarkably like the fugitive, but McNair played it off and said, "That sucks, doesn't it?" Yep.
Girl, come on.
Bordelon checked for the scars mentioned on the fax, but saw none. Not to mention, this man didn't have a beard, had short hair, and was wearing glasses, unlike the picture the prison sent out. McNair pointed south and gave the officer directions on how to get to the motel where he was supposedly staying, and mentioned there was a Walmart nearby, which, it's Louisiana. There's Walmarts everywhere. So that was a fair guess. Between sips from his water bottle, McNair calmly said, quote, "I promise you, I'm not no damned prison escapee," end quote. He appeared collected and calm, but slipped up at one point and later said his name was Jimmy Jones. The officer didn't clock it, though, and later said it's common for people to use two names in the South, so he wouldn't have thought anything of it. He could have been Jimmy Bob for all he knew. Eventually, Bordelon decided to let McNair go. He had no probable reason to detain him, and he was technically out of his jurisdiction anyway. Before Richard McNair went on his way, the officer gave him some advice. Quote, "In the future, carry some ID," end quote. The two shook hands, and Bordelon left. McNair began to backtrack north as Bordelon drove toward the penitentiary. He stopped at a roadblock and asked the two prison guards manning it if they had a proper photo of Richard McNair. The guards then showed the officer a more recent photo, this one in color. He told them he'd just stopped a guy jogging on the railroad tracks who looked similar, but that he was wearing glasses. He then asked if they could look at the video he'd recorded of the encounter. As soon as they saw the jogger, they confirmed it was McNair.
Oh my gosh.
The video of Bordelon and McNair's encounter soon appeared on TV newscasts, and on April 8th, 2006, 3 days after McNair's escape, America's Most Wanted ran its first profile on him. The program would go on to feature McNair a total of 12 times on television and 9 times on the radio. Officer Bordelon was ridiculed for getting fooled by the fugitive and letting him go free. But he'd been working off of faulty information and an out-of-date photo. McNair remained at large, and on April 13th, 2006, U.S. Marshals officially added McNair to their 15 most wanted list. He was the first prisoner to escape from a federal prison since 1991.
Damn.
Yeah. About 2 weeks after his escape, McNair successfully crossed into British Columbia from Blaine, Washington. He was stopped by Royal Canadian Mounted Police on April 28, 2006, in Penticton, British Columbia, under suspicion of driving a stolen car. The officers asked McNair to step out to be questioned, but he sprinted across a nearby field as soon as he exited the vehicle and managed to outrun the officers. The police impounded the car, but didn't identify McNair until 2 days later, when one of the officers recognized him from an episode of America's Most Wanted. When authorities examined the car, they found McNair's fingerprints and a digital camera full of self-portraits, which they determined were probably for the purpose of producing fake IDs. After escaping arrest, McNair biked to Kelowna, then drove a stolen Subaru Outback from Vernon, British Columbia, back to Blaine, Washington. He continued to travel across the United States and eventually crossed back into Canada from Minnesota. He stayed on the run, stealing cars and traveling through southern Ontario, then west to Vancouver. He evaded authorities for a whopping 18 months this time around.
Holy shit.
Insane.
Girl.
I kind of got to give this guy props. Like, this is too much work for me and too much stress. I couldn't do it, but like,
Same. Yeah.
he's committed. He's committed to the bit here. Then, on October 24th, 2007, near Nash Creek, New Brunswick, an off-duty Royal Canadian Mounted Police Constable, Dan Mellinson, spotted an expensive-looking white van with quote-unquote crappy-looking tinted rear windows and an Ontario license plate. Suspecting that the van was stolen, he noted the plate number and alerted other RCMP that it was on its way to Campbellton. The next day, Constable Stéphane Gagnon, a 6-week rookie, spotted McNair's van by chance in downtown Campbellton and gave pursuit. A low-speed car chase and subsequent foot chase ensued before McNair was finally arrested. McNair described his capture as simply the product of bad luck, saying it was, quote, just one of those days, end quote. Hey, Limp Bizkit, is that song going to be in my head all day now? Yes. McNair was transferred to a Canadian federal maximum security penitentiary in New Brunswick to await extradition to the United States. The Mounties later told the media that McNair was cooperative after his capture and even joked with them. McNair described the Campbellton RCMP as, quote, good men doing their job, end quote. In October 2008, the US-based International Association of Chiefs of Police awarded Mendelson, the officer who first spotted the van, the Looking Beyond the License Plate grand prize for his role in apprehending McNair.
Fuck yeah.
After he was returned to prison, McNair was sentenced to 5 years of solitary confinement for his escape.
Yeah, no shit.
Which, like, damn. I get it, because, like...
You can't be trusted, bruh.
Yeah. And, like, you did it once and you made us look silly, and then you did it again, and you were gone for 3 times as long.
Yeah.
And you made us look like idiots, bro. Get in the hole. I get it.
Yep.
In 2008, Byron Christopher, a crime reporter from the same New Brunswick town where McNair was captured, started corresponding with McNair. The two went on to exchange 340 plus handwritten letters, and Christopher eventually published a book on the escape artist in 2014, titled The Man Who Mailed Himself Out of Jail. In the spring of 2014, McNair was denied a parole hearing. The North Dakota Parole Board told him he could apply again in 2028, when he's 70 years old. After several prison transfers, Richard Lee McNair is currently incarcerated at United States Penitentiary McCreary in Kentucky, and so far has not managed to escape. And that is the story of the murder of Jerry Thies, the attempted murder of Richard Kitzman, and the many, many prison escapes of Richard Lee McNair.
Holy shit.
Right?
What the fuck?
The book is really good. It's really interesting. I kind of picked and chose my chapters, but like so much detail. So much crazy shit happens.
It sounds like it. Holy fuck.
I'm always fascinated by prison escapes and like,
Yeah.
especially like continuing to do it after you got caught.
Because they just add time to your sentence.
Yes.
They're not like, you know what? We get it. It's like, dude, come on. What are you doing?
You know, I will say it's like a little bit of a flex though.
For sure. It is.
Yeah. It's like, you can't hold me. Apparently, the first prison he escaped from in North Dakota named a fence after him. It's the Richard McNair fence. Yep.
That's amazing. I remember reading that like when the United States was initially founded, if you escape from prison, they just would let you go. Because they were like, you know, it is man's desire to be free. So like, if I make it out, I was like, respect, man. You're just following your instincts. Fuck the law.
It's so insane. Like,
Yeah.
I get it, but also like depends on like what criminals escaping here. Like if a serial killer gets
For
out,
sure.
we can't be just be like,
You know what? Hey,
he's good. It's fine.
I get it.
Yeah.
I get it. That was amazing. Oh my God. I'd never heard of that.
Wild, right?
Yeah, prison escapes are fucking crazy.
I know. And this one was just like so, I mean, which one? But the male one was particularly ingenious in my opinion.
I was like, that could have ended really badly.
Right? Like
Girl,
you could have
suffocated in a second.
And he worried about that they were going to like put him in like they like called it like the cage, which would be like where they stored the pallets while they were waiting for the trucks or whatever. And he was like, if I end up in one of those cages, like I'm fucked.
Fucked. Yeah.
But yeah, he just like got really lucky a lot. He had some bad luck too, but like
I'd say he had more good luck than bad.
Yeah.
For sure. But that was amazing. I'd never heard of that. Holy fuck.
Crazy.
Oh.
Anyway, check out the book. It's really interesting. The Man Who Mailed Himself Out of Jail by Byron Christopher.
Amazing. I love that. Not traumatizing, but crazy nonetheless.
Okay, good. Yay. That was my goal.
You crushed it, as usual.
Thank you. I loved your story.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. I love Otherworld.
Okay, it's so great. Yeah, definitely check out Otherworld. And we love you guys so much. This is another fucking horror podcast. I'm Monique Sanchez.
And I'm Amy Trayton.
You can find me on the gram at Pinup Girl Mo.
You can find me at Lobotomy, and that's Lobot.Amy.
If you want to see our award-nominated show live, you fucking should. Go on our website, anotherfuckinghorrorpodcast.com. There you can get tickets to our live show in New Orleans. Spooky, wonderful New Orleans with all the beignets. You can also get tickets to our Ghost Vampire True Crime Tour. There you can also pick up some sexy-ass merch designed by one Miss Amy Trayton, and it is super cute and adorable. Highly recommend. You can get all that on our website, as well as joining our Patreon. If you don't want to do any of those things, but you still want to support the show, please tell your friends about us and rate, review, and subscribe to the show, because that is the easiest and freest way to support us. Because the more ratings and reviews we get, the more visibility we get, so that hopefully someday, sooner rather than later, we can make this our full-time gig, where we can just tell you crazy stories all the time. Guys, we're so fucking obsessed with you. Thanks for being rad as fuck. As always, keep it cute.
Keep it creepy.
Bye.
Bye.